Collateralized debt obligation.
Collateralized debt obligation, yeah. So this must be the elite unit. Let's see if there's any stragglers for a minute. Anybody got questions on Nietzsche?
So the whole thing.
Hey, brother, welcome.
We've gone over. It's like William is like the rules. Dionysian is like more fun kind of side of it, right? And then
the wilder.
Yeah.
I mean, so if we as children of a universe characterized by non-teleological will, just this urge that doesn't have a direction or anything, then we also at our core are irrational. And we put a rational core around that. So the irrational is the Dionysian, the rational is the Apollonian, and the dialectic is the dance between them. You might even say it's the subconscious and the conscious, right? In Freudian terms. But yeah, that's a really good question. And then everything goes back to will to power. I'm going to try to finally wrap this dude up today, more or less. And then you've got Apollonian, right? Dionysian. Over here you've got Heraclitus, which we'll talk about. And over here you've got music should take the place of logic, which is pretty wild sounding, unless you hear it in context, right? That everything relates back ultimately to will to power, with both will and power being understood in totally different ways than we're used to, right? Will here is not, we're used to thinking of will as the capacity of mind that turns ideas into actions, right? It's the get or done capacity of mind, right? It's the difference between me raising my arm and my arm's raising, right? If I raise it, that's my will doing it. If somebody comes along and puts a string on it, that's different, right? But in this sense, will is understood as all that's left that we can say about the mind-independent world after we got the crap kicked out of us trying to come up with causality. Hume took it away from us. Kant tried to take it back. Schopenhauer showed that he begged the question in trying to do so. So we're left without noumena or any. And Schopenhauer said there's will internally, and that's what we experience as our own volition. And then there's this right black cloud, which even's calling it a black advancing cloud, gives it too much personality, right? It's just this urge. And we feel that urge within ourselves. When we get what we want, we're like, okay, what's next, right? We're never satisfied. We're always, because that's the animal part of us. And if you look how the lion takes down the gazelle, that's sheer will. And complaining about the ethical import of a lion taking down a gazelle is like complaining that the number 3 isn't blue enough. It's a category error. You don't apply this to that because lions lack the rational capacity to be held accountable as moral agents, right? So will is this force that the whole universe is and is in us as well as children of it. Power, in this case, is not brute force. It's not power, right? Power here is the ability to transcend one's own tendency to rely upon systems. Systems like Mill, like deontology, like utilitarianism, and like Christianity, okay? Nietzsche loved him some Jesus, hated the church, even though he started out in it, right? And then the only thing that, metaphysically speaking, Nietzsche said Schopenhauer was wrong. He agreed on everything, but he said, hey, buddy, you can't even talk about two realms. It's just will through and through. That's everything. It's in us, it's out of us. It's the air we breathe. It's the water we swim in, if you will, right? But where Schopenhauer said, look, we are caring, feeling beings. We care about each other. We are able to suffer. And so if we're chained to this charging blind bull, we're going to get our asses kicked. We're going to get hurt. Life is going to be just suffering and agony. So what we should do is negate it, say no, and withdraw like the Buddhists and the Hindus say, and extinguish our will inside. Nietzsche says, bring it. So where Schopenhauer says no, Nietzsche says yes. He's like, yep, I agree with you. This sucks. But that's only because our expectations were wrong. We thought there was a sky daddy, but we were just projecting, right? Turns out this is reality, and welcome. And I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm going to take this horrible picture you painted, and I'm going to say, hell yeah, bring it on. That's Nietzsche. So hey folks, welcome. Glad I paused a little bit. I'm glad you guys made it today. Thank you. We're now a quorum. There are two, rather than good and evil, welcome everyone. We're going to try to finish on Nietzsche today, okay? That rather than good and evil, Nietzsche wants us to supplant the distinction between good and evil as a way of judging one another with an understanding, a deeper understanding, that we have this rational sugar-coating, candy coating over an irrational core, because we are children of this blind force that the universe is, right? And that the better way to understand this, instead of whether we're good or evil, is to say, what is the dance? What is the dialectic? I'm going to write that. What is the dialectic? A dialectic is a relationship of opposing forces. Not opposing like on a battlefield, but almost like two dancers. And if you've seen two people, my wife and I, when we got married, we danced the tango. It took us months to learn it. But we were fierce, man. And it's like, you know, and then we got divorced. But anyway, not right after the dance, about 6 years later. But anyway, the dialectic and the dialectic are kind of in dialogue with one another within us. We have this irrational core, but we put a rational coating around it to survive and to take care of, you know, to avoid things that harm us and to try to gain the things that we need, right? So, building off of that today, right? The maelstrom, right? This what I'm using different bull flax, Howard, you know, whatever, right? The nature of the universe is irrational, right? It doesn't have rational, so it's immoral. It's just, you know, there is no right or wrong in there. But that kind of maelstrom faculty or feature that Schopenhauer's, right? Schopenhauer, the way he describes the universe sounds a whole lot to Nietzsche, Anthony, like one of the pre-Socratic philosophers, Heraclitus. I don't think we've talked about him yet, right? Okay, good. So Heraclitus was a pre-Socratic, right? Nietzsche said that the 2,500-year mistake was when Socrates and Plato said, philosophy is now not about all this other crazy stuff you guys are talking about, you pre-Socratics. They didn't call them that then, right? But instead, it's about the search for truth. Nietzsche disagrees with that. He says that will to truth can be useful, but it's not basic, the way Socrates and Plato say. Will to truth serves a deeper purpose, which is will to power, which is the most human thing about us. And in fact, the entirety of existence is will to power, and we are one manifestation of it. A lion is another one, okay? So why is it that Nietzsche likes Heraclitus so much? When you have this kind of picture of the world as this maelstrom, where nothing is permanent, nothing is fixed. Heraclitus was an early philosopher. He was in dialogue with the individual we identify as the first philosopher in the Western tradition, right? The Indians and the Chinese were doing this stuff way before we were with the Upanishads and Lao Tzu and all that kind of stuff, right? Thales was the first philosopher. Why? Well, in ancient Greece, they didn't have, as we do, the benefit of the periodic table of the elements. And so every thinking Greek person knew, for sure, right? That everything, this, wood, flesh, all of this is composed of 4 elements. Earth, air, fire, and water. Sure. Okay? And the pre-Socratics thought that they would take that reductionist move, reducing wood, flesh, plastic, right, to 4 elements. They said, well, let's double down on that reductionist move and say which of those four is the most basic one, right? What do three of them dissolve into as a substrate, right? And Thales said, it's water. Sure, water. It doesn't matter that he chose water. What matters is that he said, it's all. Once you say it's all, you're doing philosophy. That's why he's the first one. In dialogue with him was another pre-Socratic named Heraclitus, who said, oh no, Thales, you silly, silly boy. It's not water, it's actually fire. Sure. This party's fire, dude. But the reason that attracted Nietzsche is that when everything is fire, you get, as a corollary of that, one of Heraclitus' most famous quotes, which is, all is flux. All is flux. All is flux. There's no permanence. The only permanent thing is change. A human body lasts maybe 100 years. A castle lasts 600 years. The castle seems permanent to us, but it too is in flux, right? What you have is not permanence and impermanence. What you have is different rates of flux, okay? Another of Heraclitus' sayings is, you can't step in the same river twice. Why can't you step in the same river twice? Boop, boop. There, I just did it, right? Yeah.
It's not going to be the same thing as when you stepped before.
The very nature of a river is change. Thank you, Ian. Yes, exactly. Right? So if all this flux, and then we have this maelstrom, that sounds very consonant. That rhymes for Nietzsche, okay? And so if the cosmos that we inhabit is this maelstrom of change, constant change, then the way that we have, the way that we relate to that cosmos can either be bend like the willow or break like the oak, right? And if we are able to transcend dependence on systems, we will not break like the oak, but rather bend like the willow. And that's power. So we occupy this universe characterized by will. Power is making sure that we can deal with it by not breaking like the oak, by not sticking to rigid systems like utilitarianism, like deontology, like Christianity. Not Christ himself. When we do transcend, when we do succeed at will's power, when we transcend our dependence upon systems, we become Uber. And so we have the Ubermensch, or the Uberdamen, to avoid being sexist, right? Superman. I think we did this already, right? That's how it was mistranslated. Superman was just this really tough guy. Like, I got a cape, I can throw your car, I'm kind of a dick, right? He's screwing around with New York City in the early comic books. It was only after World War II that Superman started fighting for truth, justice, and the American way, whatever that is, right? Kind of like they depicted in Captain America, selling bonds and stuff, you know? Do you know why Santa Claus is red and white? Because of fucking Coca-Cola. When I found that, my faith in humanity just evaporated. Anyway, they take everything from us, man. Anyway, yeah, and guess who the greatest Ubermensch of all was for Nietzsche? You'll never guess.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus, yeah. Look at how the world had been before Jesus came along, and then he came along and dropped some serious science. The meek shall inherit the earth. That's not how things worked before he said it, right? That's pretty uber, okay? So, what we're trying to do is get at this dialectic, go deeper than the rigidity of good and evil, and get at something deeper about ourselves to explain ourselves better, that we have this irrational core, that we have put a rational surface around, and in the 2,500 years, this is the mistake, we have invested ourselves way too much in the Apollonian and really distanced ourselves from the Dionysian. Okay? The reason he appeals to these gods is not because he's, he believes that Apollo and Dionysus actually exist. They're impulses, Apollonian and Dionysian impulses. They're psychological features of ours. They're the rational and the irrational in conversation with each other. And the way that he thinks the universe is better depicted, right? The pre-Socratics and then Socrates and Plato came along and tried to explain the world in terms of expository prose, right? It's all water. Find the truth. Tangible objects are reflections of forms, right? Before that, it was just people telling stories. And some of the most effective and moving, encapsulating stories were plays that the ancient Greeks would put on. They'd have the action on the stage, and then they'd have the chorus basically singing to the person, hey, you're super fucked, be careful, And then the person would do and talk some more and whatever, get a sword and whatever. But these were called Greek tragedies. Not tragedy like grandma fell off the cliff. It's the scope of life, right? And so Greek tragedy for Nietzsche showed that Apollonian and Dionysian juxtapositions appear in the interplay of the Greek plays, of the tragedies, in that the tragic hero of the drama, right, the main protagonist, struggles to make order, Apollonian order, out of an unjust and chaotic universe, the Dionysian. Okay? Struggles to make Apollonian order of his unjust and chaotic fate. So, building on this idea of bend like the willow, break like the oak, another system that Nietzsche says we can swim around if we need to, right? It's basically don't follow, lead. That's why in the reading it distinguishes slave morality from master morality. He's not talking about actual people, some of whom are masters and some are slaves. He's talking about two ways of thinking about the world. A slave mentality is one that basically does what John Stuart Mill, Kant, and the Pope tell you to do, right? But a master morality knows when to be spontaneous, okay? And so another system is logic itself. We don't have to stick to logic itself to be fully human. And in fact, we can look deeper than logic and find music. Music is a way of navigating the world too, that's not as rigid as logic, okay? Given the fact of a Heraclitean metaphysic in which all is flux, okay? If you have ever heard jazz, there's a guy named Charlie Parker who I really like, who is amazing for his ability to improvise. Let me just play a little bit of this. That shit ain't written down anywhere. That's not written down on any sheet music. And it returns to the main theme. And then he just goes ballistic. And he's off and running. That track is called Coco, if you're looking for it, K-O-K-O. But I just love the history of that time. It was during World War II, when all of the petroleum products, including the vinyl that they would use to press records, was directed towards the war efforts. So nobody was recording music for about 3 or 4 years. And he and Dizzy Gillespie were up in Harlem, in New York City, just cooking up this new kind of music that was, what's it called? Improvisational. And it was kind of like Jackson Pollock painting, where he didn't even touch the canvas, and it was just this chaos, just trying to engage the boundary between order and chaos and see what happened. And that's abstract expressionism, is a uniquely American kind of painting that I'm really into. just because of the ideas behind it and jazz are so similar, and there's just it's two mediums used to say the same thing, right? That there is this chaos, and we can sort of access it in a way at the edge of order, right? And so excellent musicians need no sheet music, right? They don't need a map. They can navigate any landscape, right? Even musically, like we just heard. And that's how Nietzsche says we should live, rather than living our life going step by step and following recipes. We lose something human about ourselves. We lose touch with our Dionysian. Remember the festivals of Dionysus? Started with animal sacrifice and a feast, and then the consumption of a boatload of psychedelic mushrooms, capped off by a big orgy. That's them. That's how they do, right? I didn't tell them to. Don't blame me. But anyway, it's kind of like San Francisco in the 90s. But anyway, I was in my 20s, man. It's amazing that I lived. But, right? And Europe would look to us and laugh at America and say, where's your Mozart, guys? And they were looking at the wrong place. It was abstract expressionism and this improvisational jazz that it was annoyingly titled bebop. That's what happens when music journalists start writing, right? But in any case, and then music also bridges mathematics with the tangible. That was what Plato discovered from Pythagoras. And in doing so, it kind of reconciles Plato and Aristotle, right? Anyway, so he says this is how we should live. But he's not saying that we ought to replace the Dionysian, or replace the Apollonian with the Dionysian. His project is purely restorative. We've gotten a lot of mileage out of the Apollonian. We have had more people following rules, less people tearing shit up, right? Fewer Napoleons and so on, and more of a kind of agreement among people. And we now have a more predictable, safer place in which to go about having steady, loving relationships and productive lives, right? And that's all great. We don't have to give that up. But we've gone too far in that direction. We've given ourselves over too much to the, let's say the Apollonian is the rule-making, rule-obeying, right? And the Dionysian is the wild, rule-breaking part of us, okay? And those two are in a kind of dance, and we've kind of smothered this part of ourselves, and we need to bring it back to be able to gain will to power and overcome. So Uber was mistranslated as Superman. Uber actually means over, as in overcome, right? Overcoming, that is, our tendency to be dependent upon systems. To kind of sit back and let daddy decide for us, right? So we can only pull off will to power and becoming Uber if we overcome our obedient nature. So Uber is overcoming, and power is not brute force. Power is overcoming our obedient nature, okay? So while Schopenhauer believed that will, being the essence of existence, was the root of all suffering, and thus human will is rightly negated, Nietzsche, against that, affirms life and the project of the return of the Dionysian impulse to humanity as an affirmation of the will, of looking at this picture, which a lot of people find pretty despondent, right? And saying, yeah, okay, bring it, right? I'm not afraid. If you go to pretty much any bookstore or library in the US or England, you'll find the most authoritative, the translations are all done by a certain Walter Kaufmann. I think I said this before, and I'm not claiming that I have anything special. I got lucky, okay? But Walter Kaufmann is pretty much, he's no longer with us, but he's still the foremost authority on interpreting Nietzsche, right? Because if you get Nietzsche wrong, you get Hitler opening up Nietzsche and going, oh, a reevaluation of all values? You mean kill all the Jews? Let's do it, right? No, we have to get Nietzsche right, and Kaufmann comes the closest to it, right? Remember, Nietzsche talks so bombastically because he's looking back at 2,500 years of obedience, of Christianity, philosophy, and so on, and he's standing athwart it yelling, no, right? So in that kind of stance, he's got to kind of raise his voice. That explains his bombastic writing style. But so Walter Kaufman's main grad student was my teacher as an undergrad at UW-Madison back in the 90s, early 90s. So I got lucky that I got so close to the source. Otherwise, like most of my colleagues, I would just say Nietzsche. He's just might makes right, screw him, right? That's what a lot of my colleagues say, and they're just wrong. But so Walter Kaufman wrote, quote, Nietzsche celebrates the Greeks who, in facing up to the terrors of nature and history, did not seek refuge in some kind of Buddhistic negation of the will, the way Schopenhauer did. But instead, the Greeks created tragedies in which life is affirmed as beautiful in spite of everything. Okay? So just a quick reference to the text. I leave it to you to read these, to read the text. It's from the book Beyond Good and Evil. It's on Canvas, of course, as usual. But on page 57, that'll be on the PDF. Paragraphs 2 and 3 is the kind of crucial part where he distinguishes master from slave morality. And again, these are not actual masters and slaves, but states of mind, approaches to ethics. So master morality, I'll let you read that for yourself. It's kind of it kind of celebrates emotions that we normally are told are negative emotions or emotions that we should avoid. But if I can just quote quickly from the article, he's describing slave morality. He says, it is otherwise with the second type of morality, namely slave morality. Supposing that the abused, the oppressed, the suffering, the unemancipated, the weary, and those uncertain of themselves should moralize, what will be the common element in their moral estimates? The slave has an unfavorable eye for the virtues of the powerful. He has a skepticism and distrust of the good that is there honored, and he would be inclined to persuade himself that the very happiness there is not genuine. On the other hand, for the slave mentality, those questions which serve to alleviate the existence of sufferers are brought into prominence and flooded with light. It is here that sympathy, the kind helping hand, the warm heart, patience, diligence, humility, and friendliness attain to honor. That are those virtues that they find, that they seek. For here, these are the most useful qualities and almost the only means of supporting the burden of existence. Slave morality is essentially the morality of utility. There, he just bonked Mill right on the head. Okay? So that's him railing against systematization. Right? Or rather, not systematization per se, but overdependence upon it. Okay? He's not saying systematization has no place, just that it can't be basic. What's basic is will to power. Okay? A deeper purpose may be served by having some system or other, but the deeper purpose must be understood first. Okay? So, at the very beginning, I said Nietzsche says philosophy is not about the search for truth, but what improves life. And will to power tracks what improves life better than will to truth. Will to truth is useful, but only in as much as it furthers will to power. Okay? Right. So the framework of, I'm going to try to wrap this up. The framework of good and evil is the wrong one, and we should be looking at the dialectic between Apollonian and Dionysian instead. Okay? And that the best way to justify will to power is not by logic, but through music and the experience of improvising. Okay? And then obedience, right? Obedience is what keeps us from will to power. Obedience to systems. That's where parents, don't mess with your parents and don't mess with the cops, right? That's not what he's saying. But he's saying obedience to systems that tell us how to think is an affliction we can trace back to systems that demand obedient minds. As such, disobedience is will to power. Not disobedience against one's forebears, but the social climate. Disobedience against the social climate enabled by the obedience of one's fellows to antiquated power systems. So again, that's kind of the toughest lecture I give because it isn't very nonlinear. We will return to linearity after we're done with Nietzsche. But he's deliberately nonlinear. And so it takes a little bit of swooping over the territory a few times to really get him across. Now that I've done so, is he making sense to y'all? More or less? Now we can, of course, continue discussing him, either one-on-one or as, you know, on the discussion board, or in class. I'm happy to do that. But yeah, essentially, he's saying that while we're trying to perfect telling each other how best to behave, we're running ourselves into a cul-de-sac we may not be able to get out of. And when we finally completely detach from the Dionysian, which is the direction he says we're going, and I don't think we've stopped, I think we're still on that path, we will end up being robots. And remember the etymology of the word robots, right? It's a Czech word that means slave, right? And all we will do, we won't be human anymore, we'll just be these kind of automatons, right? These kind of insect-like things that go around just next line, next line, next line, right? And that's what he wants to prevent, because he feels that, right, being human is very valuable and being fully human is more so, okay? So he has a negative criticism, but he also has a positive. People say that he's a nihilist. They're totally wrong about that. Nietzsche is not a nihilist, right? He's probably the biggest anti-nihilist there's ever been, because he accepts this horrible picture of the world where we're just screwed and alone, right? And shackled to this uncaring beast, right? But he says, yeah, bring it. Okay? So any questions? I want to start getting us ready for the second essay. So, not today, but on Wednesday, we're going to have a movie day. And let me explain why I chose this movie really quick, because I started out the semester promising you I wouldn't try to indoctrinate people, which is what several media figures accuse me of doing, accuse my kind of person doing, right? After the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009, there was a hedge fund called Leucadia, run by an individual named Ian Cumming, who it was one of the largest, not as big as BlackRock, but one of the largest hedge funds in the United States at the time. And he graduated from Harvard Business School. And he was seeing that, and he graduated in the late 70s or early 80s. And what he had seen since is that his fellow alumni from Harvard Business School were becoming what he called velociraptors. They lacked any kind of ethics, right? And he was concerned about this, so he went to the University of Utah and went to the provost and said, hey, I want to get some academics together to do this particular research project. And he tapped anthropology and philosophy. And the anthropologists had their own project, I don't know what it was, but when he was sent to the philosophy department, the chair at that time was Leslie Francis, and she also happened to be my dissertation chair. So she found me a capable individual, and so she gave me, it was like 14 grand, no, 14 grand. It was nuts. To do a 2-semester project. One, create a curriculum, do research for a semester, and then teach the class in the spring. And I did that, right? And it was, the causes and effects and ethical implications of the Great Recession. And so I spent 4 months researching that, and then taught a business ethics class in the spring. And then the summer after that, this movie drops. A documentary called Inside Job, which is the one we're going to watch Wednesday. And it comported precisely with my own findings. So that's why I chose it, not because I like its conclusions, right? But from my own methodology, we came to the same place. So I trust it, in other words. But before we watch that on Wednesday, I want to give us a little bit of vocab. One is derivative. A derivative is a kind of stock that behaves like insurance. And it's used by, for example, farmers to indemnify themselves against crop failures, right? They buy these derivatives, these stocks, and if the corn harvest fails that year, they have hedged, right, a bet in buying this stock that will indemnify them, that will pay out for them, okay? But then over time, the use of derivatives became really corrupted. And in the movie, you'll see there's derivatives of derivatives, right? They basically ended up being applied to the housing market, right? And we had a housing bubble that would have been bad on its own, but we had this new kind of instrument, this financial instrument, which is basically a complex mathematical equation, right? Cooked up by people who went to the better schools so that the government regulators who regulate them, who went to the worst schools, couldn't really keep up, right? And so there were tons and tons of these derivatives, and the movie will show you, and I'll show you a short video now, built up a huge part of a lot of banks' portfolios. And when people started defaulting, the derivatives lost all value, and they were basically like time bombs inside of people's balance sheets in corporations and banks. Okay? A collateralized debt obligation is just a kind of derivative. Okay? And we'll show shortly. It's going to be Selena Gomez who tells us. Okay? And then deregulation. Derivatives were really fought hard. It was a lot of fight from top financial interests to keep derivatives unregulated. And it was because they were unregulated that they turned into time bombs. If they had been regulated, they wouldn't have. So the film also goes into, first we had this regulation that we put in place after the Great Depression, and then over time that was eroded in 1999 by the Financial Services Modernization Act, signed by President Clinton. This is not a Democrat-Republican thing. This is we have a Wall Street government, right? And the Democrats and Republicans are just puppets on the hands of the corporate party, of the banking party, okay? Right? And then, and so we deregulated, then 2008 happened, we re-regulated, and even now, and this is why, right? This isn't just to say, you know, when people are materially okay, they're pretty much politically okay, but now we're so politically fiercely hating one another in this country because people are worried about their material well-being. That's the basic cause of this, okay? And then also, about 3 years ago, the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank got the laws that were passed after the Great Recession deregulated, and within 6 months, his own bank went belly up. Idiots. So here are some visual aids. When we watch the movie, this will appear on the movie, but hello, wakey wakey. I want you to notice this graphic. This explains the basic problem. It used to be that lenders would, it's kind of weird we're talking about this after Nietzsche, I know. But, talk about going from one thing. But the lenders were very interested in making sure that the home buyers could pay back their loans because they lent directly. But when the mortgage payments got packaged as CDOs, right, they were sold by the lenders to investment banks who then sold them to investors. And so when the mortgage payment, so there was no accountability from the lenders. They were just saying, yeah, hey, no job, no income. Doesn't matter, have a house, man. And that ended up being the time bombs that crushed. I mean, and it wasn't just banks who lost money. People lost their 401ks, their entire life savings, right? A lot of people lost their homes and everything. And so, keep an eye on that because that is the root of the problem right there. That was the structural problem that led to the meltdown. And here's Selena.
Okay, so here's how a synthetic CDO works. Let's say I bet 10 million on the blackjack.
10 million because this hand is meant to represent a single mortgage bond. Okay, Selena has a pretty good hand here, showing 18. Dealer showing 7. That's a really good hand for Selena. Good odds. In fact, her chances of winning this hand are 87%.
So, my odds are good. I'm on a winning streak. Everybody in this place wants to get in on the action. How could I lose, right?
Now, this is a classic error. In basketball, it's called the hot hand fallacy. The player makes a bunch of shots in a row. People are sure they're going to make the next one. People think whatever's happening now is going to continue to happen into the future. During the real estate boom, markets were going up and up, and people thought they would never go down.
So people who are watching and think that I won't lose will make a side bet. Now this is the first synthetic CD.
I love Selena Gomez. Bet you 50 million she wins. And I'll give you 3-1 odds.
3-1 odds? Okay, I'll take that bet. Now, somebody else is going to want to make a bet on the outcome of their bet.
50 million she wins.
That will lead to synthetic CBO number 2.
Hey, I bet you 200 million that lady in the glasses wins that bet.
She probably will win. So I want great payoff.
About 21.
Deal.
22-1, not 21.
More and more synthetic CDs.
And we can transform an original $10 million investment into billions of dollars.
You okay?
No. I actually feel.
So that's actually not from Inside Job, Steve Carell there. That is another really good film about the Great Recession called The Big Short. But I can't really recommend it because every other word is profanity. I know where I am in the world. So, look, it's got Homeboy in it. What's his name again? Ryan Gosling, that's right. The Driver. Ooh, that's a movie. But anyway, it's incredibly good at explaining it, and it tells a super good story. You even get Margot Robbie drinking champagne naked in a bubble bath, explaining things. So literally, this is the sexied up version of the movie we're going to watch. But if you want to watch The Big Short, I highly recommend it. That's super good. But again, with that caveat that that's just how people in the financial world speak. Every other word is. Did anybody see Wolf of Wall Street? Dude, the swearing in that, am I right? It's perpetual. But so, I think it's unfair, because I think people, and it's not my business, if people object to using that kind of language. It's probably a better world without it. But anyway, so, we'll watch the first part, we'll watch as much as we can given the time allotment, on Wednesday of the other film, the documentary film. And then Monday, a week from today, the second essay is going to be this. Something like, describe the causes and effects of the Great Recession, and I might even have it here. We got time. It's probably more useful if I do this. Right. Oh yeah. So we haven't talked much about global rich and global poor. We will. But one thing to note is that what happens on Wall Street does not stay on Wall Street. And people across America lost their homes and their life savings. People in other countries less affluent than ours had to put off entire generations of progress and had to stay on the farm instead of going to college and things like that. So this really did impact people globally, okay? So here's essay 2. What, if anything, do the global rich owe the global poor, and why or why not? Take as your case study the Great Recession, as depicted in the film, and use the philosophers we've studied in your analysis, right? Relate the relative concept and explain how our society ought to respond, right? So there's the outline. Same as the other one, summarize the 3. Explain which philosopher's approach you find superior, and then show how that philosophy you've chosen best enables you to analyze the Great Recession. And when you're watching the movie, I want you to keep in mind 3 questions, okay? That will help you write your essay. First of all, Was there deliberate wrongdoing? Look at the evidence, see what you think. Was there deliberate wrongdoing? And if so, 2, can we identify the perpetrators? And I'm not just thinking, because if you talk about the dude at the stock desk who's trying to, you know, he's cold calling people, don't blame them. They were just doing their job. They were operating on perverse incentives. You know what perverse incentives are, right? They give you a reward for doing something immoral, basically. But the people in government, and even people in academia, who justified deregulating derivatives, right? Who said the government should not get involved in this. Because look, there are 2 main spheres, right, in life. One is the government, and the other one is the market, okay? And you can't say, I want less government, without thereby saying, I want more corporate control over my life. It's one or the other. You don't just get to throw off one. You're either moving from you're moving closer to one sphere or the other. So that's the real macro discussion between political left and right. How much the government should be involved in mitigating the vicissitudes of the free market, okay? And so that amount that the government is keeping back from the market was argued for by people in government and in academia. See if you can spot them in the movie. It's pretty easy, okay? And then third, so first is, was there deliberate wrongdoing? Second, can we identify the perpetrators? And third, how should our society respond? The movie that we'll watch on Wednesday starts with the case of Iceland, where the same thing happened, and they rounded up the heads of all these banks and threw them in the slammer. Nothing like that happened here. Nothing like that happened here, right? The banks got bailed out. We did not. Unless anybody's a billionaire here. Any billionaires in my class? If so, I'll tell you something about your grade you're going to like. Anyway, just pay me $1 million. That's nothing to you if you're a billionaire. Right? And so that's what I'm going to ask you in your paper. How should our society respond? And how can Mill, Kant, or Nietzsche guide you toward that? And it can be anything. It can be, hey man, you know, capitalism gonna capitalism. Too bad, commie. You know, you think the government shouldn't be involved, you're a commie, which is, you know, wrong. But it's what a lot of Americans say, right? Anything to the left of where they are is communism. That's just how people operate sometimes. It's sad. It's kind of like conspiracy theories, right? Where you don't have to do the work to actually be smart. You can just believe a conspiracy theory and feel smart. Sad stuff. But, right, all the way from that to, well, we should probably pass new laws. But then, of course, new laws can be overturned. That's regulation and deregulation is the history since the Great Depression, right? And our reaction to that. So that can be watched back and forth. Or you could say bring out the guillotines. I don't mind if you bring out the guillotines, honestly. That would be fine with me. Nobody likes that one. Okay. Nobody likes that one. Apparently I've been teaching this too long. But does it make sense where we're going with this? Okay, great. And then after that, we'll start political philosophy. Ooh la la. Yeah, baby. But so if there are any questions, no more questions? Okay, guys, we can end there then. Let us adjourn. Thanks for showing up today, everybody. This is my most, this is the class I have to remind least about coming to class. For this later in the day. But I really appreciate you guys coming. I know that was kind of a lot. That is my toughest lecture I give, trying to do Nietzsche. So thanks for bearing with me on that. Let me know if you need anything by email, and let me be the first to wish you a nice weekend.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks for coming.
This is SA2 is how many pages?
Oh, SA2 is 5 pages. But again, if you do it the right way, you'll have trouble keeping it under 5.
Are we doing the same AI thing, or just...
Oh, no, well, you know what? Screw the AI thing. I don't feel like it. You guys feel like it? I don't feel like it.
No.
All right. All right, have a good one, you guys.
I mean, it wasn't too big of a difference.
No, it wasn't. But I forgot to say it, so hey, love your shirt.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
I wanted to ask you, so like,
Yeah.
based on what I understand from you said about Nietzsche,
Yeah.
it's very hard to understand because it's very nonlinear, like you said.
Exactly.
But like, I feel like Nietzsche is like really unoriginal.
Oh, nice.
Like that's like the biggest thing. Like I feel like he's really onto something, but then like he spends his entire argument in philosophy, like on criticizing Kant and Mill, and like
Yeah.
it seems like he's just criticizing and not really offering much. Even though like he is offering this, but even like what I said last time, this is just the golden mean. And
Right.
this is like, is this like mind? What this web? Is this web like a Nietzsche thing, or is that just you explaining it?
I can't really remember where I got that from.
Okay.
I've been doing this for so long, but I'm pretty sure it's me.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I assumed because it's like obviously I showed you that picture that I'm doing of my
Which
that's
I
very, like,
tried to
web-like.
puzzle out the other day, and it's fascinating.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
is
pretty-
that something that people in the church do?
So yeah, there's like
Okay, I thought it might have been like an exercise that you start, kind of ordering yourself to be more effective. It just seems like a church, because the church tries to be very constructive.
yeah, the church does not do that at all.
Oh, they don't. Okay, that's a whole you thing.
That's a me thing.
Okay,
Like,
cool. That makes it more interesting for me.
Yeah, but like in that there is definitely some religious components because like
I saw that.
I mean like with Nietzsche like there's like Buddhism and like things like that and
Yeah.
like, there's definitely not every religion is wrong in 100%. There's got to be
No,
some-
God, no. Every to have lasted that long, to have attracted that many people, there's a
there has to be
kernel of
something,
truth.
like that's a great way of putting it. Like,
Yeah.
I call it like a nugget of truth. Like
Yeah, exactly.
that's kind
There's-
of the idea. Of
And then everything forms around that. But yeah, I think of that with music too. People say like, I hate country music. Dude, there's some great country music. Charlie Parker, the guy I just played for you
yeah,
in here.
I know Charlie.
Of course you do. Sorry, but you may not know he loved country music.
Oh, that's cool.
Adored country music. He would go to because he would play these country songs, and somebody got up the nerve to ask him because he was feared by everyone because he was so mighty an artist.
Yeah.
They said, "Why do you listen to that stuff?" And he goes, "Listen to the stories." That is so good. Yeah.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah. But so I feel you. I think what is the difference between creation and synthesizing? That's something that's driven me crazy, right?
Mhm.
It seems to be that
Is this
we
another
only.
Nietzsche, or-
Yeah, I'm trying to answer your criticism.
Mhm.
And I think it might have something to do with this because, people do treat Nietzsche like he's iconoclastic, and you're saying he's a rehash. So I'm trying to, no, I think you've got a point there.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to kind of reconcile those two things. But I think, in effect, he was the first one to take ancient Greek drama or tragedy and hook it up with modern European philosophy. But again, that's not iconoclasm, that's just synthesis.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that really cuts to the core. Is there anything that is truly creative, or is everything human synthesis?
Yeah, that's a good.
As a corollary of all human experience is interpretive, right? And that's why fundamentalists are so dangerous, because
Yeah.
they say there is exactly one way to read this Bible.
Mhm.
And oh, by the way, it's my way, right? Like we were saying about the kernel of quality and everything, right? There is in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Tao Te Ching, in the Torah, in the Quran, in the Bible, there are truths in there. But the way that those truths have such staying power and can gain such massive appeal among millions or hundreds of millions is because the text, even in its truth, behaves like a kind of mirror.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand that it's a mirror, then you're going to see your own projection and say everybody should be me. And that's the danger of fundamentalism, because everybody isn't you.
That is interesting because Nietzsche is like obviously he focuses on like the background of people
Yeah.
more and stuff, so that kind of has a lot to do with it. I
Yeah.
don't know if Nietzsche actually covers like that kind of kernel of truth thing. It seems like he's like on the steps to that, but like he's not kind of where.
Not to the degree we have. I
Yeah.
think we've gone a little further than he has just in this
Okay.
conversation.
Yeah, like I think like so with my web thing. That,
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the idea. It's not like
Yeah.
like religious principle like you have to be baptized or you have to be circumcised. Or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Like it's like more like this is like a thing of truth that like people have held on to for.
So the map is kind of what is in common among various.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay. It's like because I need a little bit of a key
yeah.
to read it, and that's a great key right there.
Yeah, and I think like I feel like this is really obvious, but maybe it's not obvious just to like all these systemists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It seems to be pretty similar to what Nietzsche is saying, like kind of the background of people, and then like I don't know when he said something today that I liked. It was like he said a lot that I liked, but one specific thing.
I moved pretty fast today.
Yeah,
I didn't even have coffee.
You said something like castles die.
Oh yeah, everything is in flux.
Exactly.
And
all is flux, yes.
but there is no permanence. The only permanent thing is change, with different things changing at different rates.
Okay, I think that's not true. Because the nuggets of truth, like the kernels of truth thing we're talking about right now, is like literally those are staying power from like Jesus' time to like now and probably way longer and stuff. So those like ideas that have lasted.
And that argues for Plato.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know.
So,
yeah. No. I like the idea. As far as how much I subscribe to it, like, is anything permanent? I guess I've never really sat and thought about it. But certainly. Like, I think people want to be free. Yeah, I think like people want to not be, and that's as long as we're human, we're going to have that. Yeah. And if nothing is eternal, that's the closest thing to it. Yeah. Right. Permanence, I guess we'll stick with.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like the only things that will be permanent are these principles, or these truth and stuff. And those are, I think, that's what Nietzsche's like getting up to, but he's not getting there.
Yeah, he doesn't want to go as far as Plato, but Plato totally goes there.
Yeah, he's getting stuck in the criticisms.
That's
like,
right.
If, like I said with the religion thing, like if we get a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of this, and the truth in there,
right?
If we do that for philosophers, or like really anything, but philosophers in general, like
agreed.
Like if we take the good of the truth of Plato,
yeah,
and then the truth of Nietzsche, and the truth of Kant, and like all these people, like, and then kind of synthesize it, but kind of systematize it.
A pluralistic approach.
Exactly. Like, I think that's really something, but I don't know if that's like something.
Oh, I think most philosophers agree with that. Yeah. That's the thing.
But then we like end up subscribing to the systems and stuff. So like we all think that, but then like we kind of ignore it. What's confusing.
I know. I'm writing a book right now where I am defending. I spend a chapter defending indirect utilitarianism, which is like this thing that's been beaten into this shape by constant criticism. And Elijah Milgram is a really good philosopher up at the U, and he says, as we refine these systems to indemnify them against counterexamples, what indication at all do we have that we're getting closer to truth?
Yeah.
We're just kind of adding more parts or subtracting more parts onto this creation, right? And the creation just kind of exists for its own sake after a certain point. So I do it because, I do it because I was told in my dissertation process that by the leading Platonist in the world, actually. We had him, Nick White. Nick White is the leading Platonist in the world. He said two really cool things. One, read unto despair. You will never be done. You'll never get, I know. From someone, isn't it? Perhaps. And then the other one is, don't be a casuist, be a theorist. So don't become an expert on abortion or this political theory or this thing.
Don't get too niche.
Don't get too niche, and make sure you can operate at the theoretical level. Like not just I'm utilitarian or I'm Kantian, but here is a viable version of utilitarianism. So I'm doing it under his advice.
Interesting.
But, and it also seems to get respect from, in fact, those two visiting philosophers, the one from Edinburgh, has her own version of utilitarianism called individualist utilitarianism. So we both do IU. Mine's indirect utilitarianism, hers is individualist utilitarianism.
And it doesn't even work because you can't go.
And I had AI compared them. And it liked mine better. I didn't tell her that. But yeah, I sent her my chapters, and like hopefully I'll get some good feedback from her. But I totally feel you that like that Nietzsche is a bit of a rehash. That he's talking about these people in a certain way. And that just brings me to, you know, is there a real difference between creativity and synthesis? Or is creativity only synthesis? And if it is only synthesis, is that so bad?
I don't know. Like, I think what Nietzsche would argue if he was like into this question is like, he would kind of tie it back into music is logic, because like,
yes,
you know, you can do like, you can synthesize something or like systematize something, but like that doesn't mean it'll be like good. Exactly. So like
exactly.
He would kind of tie it back into that, and he would say like, oh,
you got it. Take your time.
He would say that like, no, I've lost it.
That's okay. That's okay.
But,
yeah, no, it's sort of like you can create this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But what I want to know is, when you push it out the window, will it fly?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like, maybe what I mean is that like, with the I'm never gonna get it right. Dionysus.
Yeah, yeah. It takes a long time. It takes a few times. There's repetition.
It goes to like you can go too far in either way, which
yes.
is like the golden mean, I guess. But you can make music that's like so abstract and crazy that like you can't even understand it.
Yep.
And you can also make music that's like so by the book and like that it's like boring. Yeah. And like you have to find that balance between it, which is what I think Nietzsche is trying to get at. But like,
yeah,
I don't know if I'm making much sense.
No, you totally are. You totally are. I wonder if
with the creativity thing. So
go on.
With the creativity and synthesizing, is that what
yeah,
you called it?
Yeah.
So creativity and synthesizing is kind of the same thing. Like you can synthesize something, and that's like kind of like going by the book and very straightforward.
Taking what's there already and putting it together in a new way.
Exactly, but that's how it gets kind of creative. Like how you tell something, how a song like is played.
Yes.
So you can like remixes are a great example. Like
oh god, yeah.
A great like composer song or something, and then completely remaking a new song out of like
absolutely
a 30-second audio clip or like a new an old song or something. So like
you've made music, right?
A little bit.
So maybe you've had this phenomenon, like, so I'll lay down the guitar track, the rhythm guitar track, and then I'll listen to it, and I don't try to come up with something. I listen to it, and my subconscious feeds me something.
Yeah.
And I kind of hear it inside, and I'm like, well, let's try to make that happen. I like playing with GarageBand, and with Ableton has a program called Reason. Okay. Those are I use those together, or I did. I need to get back into it. I'm such a slob lately. But yeah, the best music that I've made is the stuff that my subconscious feeds to me. It tells me what belongs in there, and that's from what little I've read of musicians that I admire. That's how it happens to them too. It just kind of appears for them. There's something in our subconscious that is irrational, and maybe that's where the true creativity comes from.
Yeah.
And the synthesizing part is our rational mind.
Yeah, I would say that. Like, because you can put down like whatever comes in your mind, but like you still have to clean it up and trim it down.
Exactly. And the golden mean is one angle of the Apollonian Dionysian that we need to bring them into balance in a sort of way. But you know, with Aristotle, it was looking for virtue, and for Nietzsche, I'm not trying to say he's not a rehash, but for Nietzsche, it seems deeper.
Yeah,
that it goes to the
channeling passion or something like that.
Yeah, and it's the dance not between different types of rationality, right? It's the difference between rationality. It's the balance between rationality and irrationality. Yeah. And and that he can't be the first. Schopenhauer, he took that from Schopenhauer, right?
I'm not helping the rehash allegations.
Yeah, not at all, not at all. But yeah, it's, God, what did I read the other day that, that the importance of education is that it doesn't matter if somebody said it before. It doesn't matter that somebody has said it before. You haven't said it yet. Oh, okay. And each individual puts their own imprimatur on it. Like I didn't get doing spider diagrams in Nietzsche. I did that, right? At least I think. When I was a kid, I had this D&D character. He was a paladin named Stargon. And I reminded my best and oldest friend because he visited a couple months ago. He's like, oh yeah, mine was named Stargun. He's like, you stole that from me. I was like, oh my God, I forgot. You're so right. Because I was probably 7 or 8. And like, you just do that and forget it. And, you know, it is interesting. But there is something to, even though the lesson has been taught before, each new person who teaches it puts their own imprimatur on it in a certain way, which is, that doesn't get you to either, you know, to the either side of the rehash. And yet there's value in it just because it's elucidated from a different angle, I guess. But yeah, no, it's interesting.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that actually goes in line with what I was talking about.
But what's really cool is if you have time ever, crack open a Nietzsche book, because he speaks so damn cryptically.
Yeah, I actually really like his writing. He's very like figurative and like,
yeah, he's kind of a poet.
Yeah, a bit.
He's an incel poet. He's a poet. He's a total incel. But yeah, he like kind of he when I read him, it's like I feel like I'm on a mountainside.
That's a good.
And the mountains are speaking.
Comparison.
You know, yeah. I mean, that's what he did when he would write. He would go to his little cabin. And I can't remember what it's called now, but Sils Maria, which is in Switzerland. But he would just walk in the mountains and then write about it, you know, and then write from that kind of experience. But yeah, instead of getting laid, he hiked.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but so and then, you know, the whole bombast of his language is him standing athwart 2,500 years of increasing obedience, increasing Apollonianism. So he kind of felt he needed to do it, but he did enjoy it. You can tell. He does. I mean, Ecce Homo, one of his later books, he has chapters called "Why I Am So Wise." Like that.
Really gone into this.
Yeah, he's not because he argues that the ancient Greeks didn't have humility. If they were good at something, they would put it in your face. Yeah, they didn't know about humility or anything like that.